Why does my back hurt if I've had an injury in the past? Now, generally, if you've had a bad back in the past, it's going to come back in the future, because one thing we do understand is that past injury is an indicator for future injury. Now, the reason for this is sort of number one is, why did you hurt your back in the first place? How did that come about? That might come about because of a sport, because of too much exercise or fitness. It could be that you've got an active job or a sedentary job. Now, we've got to understand, first of all, why that's happening, because there's a good chance that it will happen in the future. Then what we find is people don't rehabilitate well enough. So with regards to rehabilitation, people just want to get on with the job that they're doing, or the exercise that they've come to do, or the sport that they want to be involved in. And what they don't necessarily do is give their body a chance to rehabilitate well enough, which is why not only just having an injury is an indicator of a future injury, but if we don't rehabilitate it well enough, then we're leaving our body vulnerable for that to happen again, because the body in that area isn't as strong as another area. So if we're a runner and we get a bad back and our legs are feeling fine but our back's hurting, as soon as the pain or the problem starts, or you start to think the problem goes away, because your legs are fine, you're going to go out and run. You're not necessarily going to give it the time to rehabilitate, to recover, and to repair. And then what we find is, which is closely related, is people wait for a problem before they do anything about it. So what they aren't doing is they aren't thinking prevention, they're thinking, I'll deal with that when that happens. So if I get a bad back, I'll deal with that when I get a bad back. I won't put the building blocks in place to think, well, I'm going to minimize my risk of injury as best as possible. So I'm not going to build the core strength. I'm not going to have the hip flexibility that I need. I'm not going to work on posture and technique. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get on with what I'm going to get on with, and if I get a problem, I'll sort it out then. But that, in a sense, is as much a part of the problem as not rehabilitating well enough. So, because what we've got to do sort of post-injury rehabilitation is somewhat synonymous with pre-injury rehabilitation, if that's the right way to describe it, or preventative exercise and rehabilitation are basically one and the same thing. I don't tend to use prevention because I don't think we can prevent an injury, but what we can do is we can minimize our risk. So if we can put in the proper movement, the proper technique if we're doing exercise, so the proper movement in everyday life, the proper exercise technique if we're doing that, the proper technique for any sport that we play, if we can build the core strength and stability that we need, if we can build flexibility into the joints, what we're going to do is we're going to start sort of putting the building blocks in place to minimizing risk of injury. What health and fitness at the moment is built towards is do a little bit of rehabilitation, and as soon as the pain's gone, then go back to doing what you're doing, rather than let's build the foundation so we can then go and do the sport or the fitness that we want to do. We do it in English, we learn the letters, and then we learn how to put them into words. Then we learn the words and learn how to put them into sentences, and then sentences into paragraphs, and so on and so forth. But we aren't doing it necessarily with fitness, because all we're doing is we're just doing it, okay, so I've got a pain, I sort the pain out, as soon as the pain's gone, then I'm fine. But that's not necessarily the case. Pain doesn't equal injury free. What we've got to be able to do is put in place the building blocks of exercise, stretching, core strength, core stability, flexibility, so on and so forth, proper movement, proper exercise technique, because that is us learning the letters, forming them into words, learning the words, forming them into sentences, and learning sentences and forming them into paragraphs. And that's how we need to do it. And then what we can start to do is we can then start layering on top the fitness that we want and the sport that we want. So it's a little bit of a paradigm shift in the way that you think about injuries and rehabilitation, but it will set you up for a minimized risk of injury in the future and a potential for greater health and fitness in the future. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's given you some ideas. My name is Chris from Christopher Holt Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.